Hello, Audioholics. This is Logan, and welcome back to Audioholics Anonymous, another album review. Here we have Transatlantic, the Absolute Universe. Now, there are two versions of this album, and to help me explain that, here is two versions of Tyler.
Unfortunately, the other version of me is absent today. I
Yeah.
feel like he was just wasn't all there. You know what I'm
You
saying?
know where he is? You know where he is? He's across
Where is
the
he?
Atlantic.
Fuck you.
Anyway, so there are two versions of this album. Forevermore is the more unabridged version. And what's the name of the other album?
The breath of life.
Breath of Life, correct. We will be covering that in its own separate video. This is a more uh, direct review. Like, we both took notes on this, and we both have
Yeah.
opinions that are, I think, a bit more thought out. In the other video, we will just be doing a maybe discussion slash debate, but
Yeah.
overall,
Like
we
we
felt like it doesn't really qualify
deserve
a
a
review
review.
because it's so similar to this album.
Well, that and I just don't think like it would have just been like similar thoughts, but a little bit
Yeah.
worse. And you'll get that when you watch the discussion video. But all
For
right, so
right
let's
now,
go
we are
on
just going
to
to for right now we are just going to be covering Forevermore. And
yeah.
to start off, we have vocals. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so let's just get right into it. One of the more unique aspects of the band is that every member sings, which is something that, bands don't usually do. I mean, even the Beatles, not every member sang all the time or really all that often. It was mostly just John and Paul with like occasional vocals from Ringo. And I know George sang here and there too, but I think he was the one who sang the least, right?
Yeah. Uh, uh,
So
uh, yeah, like Ringo probably sang the least, is my guess.
either way, like something Transatlantic does great is they really like to have equal time for every member singing. There might be songs where you might hear more of Morse than the other guys, but then there are songs where you hear more of Portnoy and more of the other guys than you do of Morse. So it's really give or take. I feel like throughout the whole experience, I got equal or around equal listening time of every vocalist. And I feel that one of the best things about having four separate singers is that you can stick them where they shine best. If you need something aggressive, you can have Portnoy. If you need something more melodic, you can throw Morse in, or maybe Travavas, or, like you can choose the one that fits that part of the song best. And that's just more versatile by default than having one singer or even two singers. The vocals are literally always shining as a result of that. There is not literally 1 millisecond of vocals on this album where I have even a little complaint. As a result of that, 10 out of 10 for this section.
I will also give it a perfect 10 out of 10 score. I think it fits the album just fine. While I am not necessarily familiar with Neil Morris's other projects or anything else from this record besides Mike Portnoy, for example, I am inclined to imagine that this is par for the course for them. I've not listened to Spock's Beard. I have not listened to the Neil Morris Project, and everybody else on this band I just plain have never heard of, apart from, again, Mike Portnoy, who is a very popular and talented drummer. But yeah, 10 out of 10, completely perfect, nothing wrong.
So next we have instrumentation, instrumentals, and just as positive. They are complex, technical, interesting, memorable, and so fucking tasty. It reminds me strongly of classic 70s progressive rock like Yes, but I'll say I honestly prefer Transatlantic style. I feel the band brings a certain edge that Yes and other 70s prog rock bands don't really have, generally speaking. So who do we have here on this album? Well, everybody shares lead vocal duty, as mentioned earlier. Other than that, we have Mike Portnoy of Dream Theater and Sons of Apollo fame on drums, Neil Morse from Spock's Beard, and of course the Neil Morse Band on keyboard, Pete Trewavas from Marillion on bass, and finally we have Royan Stolt from the Flower Kings on guitar. Every member of this band brings it on this record, but I think Mike Portnoy and Pete Trewavas stand out. I really liked the bass playing on this album. It was always a standout, and you could really hear it in the mix, which I'll talk about later. Um, and usually I'm a guitar player, so usually I latch on to the guitar parts of an album, but every so often an album like this comes around where I prefer the drums and the bass. It's rare, but it does happen. There's a hell of a lot of instrumental variety and just variety in the way the instruments are used in this record. I was never, ever, ever bored or wanting for something else in the performances. The only knock I'd place against the instrumentals is that sometimes, and this was a bit rare, they got a bit too self-indulgent. Like I could almost feel Portnoy like sneering at me after hearing one of his drum fills or something, and it got a little bit too pretentious, even for my tastes. But I'm not going to knock the album much for that because it's Transatlantic. If you don't know what you're getting into, I don't know what to tell you.
Get out
So
of the kitchen.
9.5 out of 10.
Um, Fuck your pretentious bullshit. 10 out of 10. And honestly, I would give it 11 out of 10 if I could. And if you disagree, then I would like to remind my viewers that closed captions are always an option. Uh, Even with my lack of knowledge or the members, I know for a fact that they have talent. Every aspect of this is top notch, from the vocals from all people to the drums to the guitar to the bass. I would maybe argue that the drums for me are the best part, but that is hardly a knock against anything else. 10 out of 10, perfect.
So next we have songwriting and composition. This is top-notch stuff, guys. I'm tired. I can't talk. The composition of this album is far above my pay grade, personally. All I can tell you is that as a listener, it felt like a complete musical journey from front to back. Once the album started, it rarely felt like the album was slowing down. It had this momentum about it that even in the slower, more minimalistic parts, it still felt like it was going at the perfect speed. Like, think of a roller coaster. It may have its less intense moments, but it never really feels slow or boring, if it's a good roller coaster anyway. As a result of that, the album, despite being an hour and a half long, didn't even feel like a 45-minute album. It went by like that.
Yeah.
Nothing needed to be cut, nothing needed to be changed. The production was arguably the most amazing part of the whole thing, as you can clearly hear what every instrument is doing at every point in time, even when the vocals were going full force, which is rare. You don't really hear that. A lot of times they bury the bass in the mix and it's really hard to hear. Not so with this album. Speaking of, though, I do have a little bit of a nitpick. I kind of wanted more vocals in the composition. I like my drawn out prog instrumental sections just as much as the next pretentious prick, but I'll admit I was really craving for more vocals at times. I really love the way vocals are done in Transatlantic. I just wish they were done more. Only slightly more, though. There's a specific part towards the end where they layer a bunch of vocals, gentle giant style. I just wish they did stuff like that more. This is definitely a nitpick, though. Don't get that twisted. So, again, I'm not going to take off much for that. So, 9.5 out of 10 for this section as well.
I will give it an 8 out of 10, and that is a tentative 8 out of 10. Because I want to we looked and we couldn't actually find the concept for this album. So I figured I would negate that part of the review and come back to it if I am ever able to find out the concept. But as of this video, I give it an 8 out of 10. The production, mainly for the production and the structure, they are completely solid with a ton of musical variety. The length can irritate people for sure, even for people who are into this kind of thing. But that is the main reason I am reluctant to really give it a higher rating. For this score can only go up on repeated listens. As for me, I am, as far as I'm concerned, rather, I will say that as a result of this length, it is hard to really get into the groove of a particular song or really let a song sink in. Now, don't get me wrong, there are good songs on here, but this is just a sort of like this is an issue I have with prog in general, personally. I am a lot of times not really able to get into its groove because, it's not pop. It doesn't always have one. That being said, 8 out of 10.
All right, so finally we come to personal enjoyment. Obviously, speaking as the prog head of the channel, I loved the listening experience that this album gave me. I think there's serious replay value with this record. As a result of its length, I can only see my enjoyment of this record going up with each and every listen. The more I listen to it and notice the intricacies, I think I will like it more and more. As it stands, it's a great prog rock record. I just don't know if I quite love the album yet. I don't think it would crack my top 75 just yet, put it that way. Maybe in a year it'll be in my top 15 though, so there's the caveat with that. So my score for this section is 8.5 out of 10.
I give it an 8 out of 10. Admittedly, I am a bit hit or miss on prog rock, as many of you may know who have followed the. Sorry, I can't even say that with a straight face. This is, however, an amazing throwback to the golden age of prog and arguably music in general, the 70s. I mean, you had, yes, Pink Floyd, Rush, the Beatles, The Who, and early Genesis and those are just a few of the bands that are clearly involved in the album's sort of sound and sort of inspiration as a whole. And they can go toe to toe with all of those bands. Honestly, with a lot of those bands, I'm a huge Beatles fan. I grew up with them. I'm a huge Who fan. I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan. This is not faint praise coming from me. They can go toe to toe with all of their idols. And that is really saying something. Rainbow Skies and The World We Used to Know are my favorites, with no real weak tracks to speak of.
I remember Looking for Light, I think is the one of the last songs. That song really blew me away, but other than that, it's hard for me to remember individual songs because I kind of think of it as like a whole package, not really a bunch of songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but if you were to, and yeah, you should listen to this album start to finish, but I would say that those are maybe the two biggest highlights for me.
All right, so without further ado, let's get on to our final score. For me, this is a 9.4 out of 10. I really think that that's a good score for this album. I think it's a deserving score. And the reason for that is I do feel that there are certain flaws, which I've hopefully highlighted, nitpicks, but flaws nonetheless. So it's not a perfect record. It's not a 10 out of 10 album. But I will admit that maybe after listening to it 5, 8, 10 times, it could be. But you could argue the mere fact you have to listen to it that much is a flaw in of itself. So there's that. What's your score?
My score is a 9 out of 10, and I would like to add to your analysis. You said it's not a 10 out of 10 album. Yeah, but it comes pretty damn close between my
Really
9 out of
close.
10 and a 9.4. This is like, I mean, if you were really generous and had no idea how rounding works, you could round us up to 10 out of 10.
Yeah, pretty easily. I mean, it's very close to a perfect record, but I don't think there are really any such thing as a completely
Yeah.
perfect record.
I will say this is a masterpiece album, though.
Yeah.
Definitely worth your time if you are a prog rocker or just need something to get stoned to. I will be sure to be listening to this again, and it sounds if it sounds remotely up your alley, you probably will enjoy too, and will probably end up listening to it repeatedly as well. So my overall score is a 9 out of 10. His overall score is a 9.4 out of 10.
Yeah, so what did you guys think about the album? Tell us your thoughts in the comments section. Are there any albums coming out that you'd like to see us cover? Comment down below that as well. We will look through it and see if there's anything that catches our eye. I know we're planning on covering the new Simulacrum album. I don't know if we'll have the review out by the time this is out, but if not, look forward to that. And we'll have the discussion video out too as well. All right, so without further ado, we bid you
Audio
audio
do.
do. Bye bye.